I want you to meet a couple. I won't use their real names, but I promise you, you either know them or you are them. She works in corporate communications. Salary $58,000. He's a software developer at a mid-sized company. Salary $76,000. Combined household income $134,000 per year. That places them comfortably in the top 25% of all American households. On paper, these two should be absolutely dominating. They should be maxing out their 401ks. They should be building a real estate portfolio. They should be taking their kids to Europe every summer and feeling completely bulletproof about their financial future. Here's their actual reality. Last Tuesday, their washing machine died. The repair estimate came in at $380. They spent 45 minutes that night arguing about whether to fix it or replace it. Not because they had strong opinions about appliances, but because neither option felt financially comfortable. They have approximately $2,400 in their savings account. That's it. That's the entire buffer between them and chaos. They both leave for work before their kids wake up. They both get home after 6 p.m. exhausted with just enough energy to heat up something for dinner and collapse on the couch. They haven't had a real conversation that wasn't about logistics in weeks. Date night? They can't remember the last one. And here's the part that keeps them up at night. They did everything correctly. They got the degrees, they landed the careers, they found each other, got married, combined their finances like every financial advisor recommends. They bought the house in the neighborhood with the good school ratings. They followed the entire script, word for word. So why does it feel like the walls are closing in? Why does a household pulling in $134,000 feel one unexpected expense away from genuine financial crisis? If you've ever looked at your combined paychecks and thought, there is absolutely no mathematical reason we should feel this broke, then what I'm about to explain is going to rewire how you understand money, work, and the modern economy. Welcome to Capital Sense. I dedicate an unreasonable amount of my time to deconstructing the hidden financial systems that nobody explains to you, the invisible structures that determine whether you're building wealth or just running in place. If you're in a household where two people are grinding, both of you exhausted, both of you sacrificing, and somehow the bank account never seems to reflect that effort, you're exactly who this video is for. Because today, we're not discussing investment strategies or side hustles or any of the usual personal finance content. We're exposing one of the most significant financial deceptions of the past 50 years. We're exposing why two incomes often leave you more financially vulnerable than one income did for your grandparents. And I need to warn you, what I'm about to explain might make you angry. It might make you question decisions you've already made. But it's going to give you the framework to actually escape the trap that most dual-income households don't even realize they're caught in. Here's the foundational lie that the entire modern economy is built upon. The story goes like this. Two incomes are inherently superior to one income. The math seems self-evident, doesn't it? If one person earning $50,000 can support a family, then logically, two people each earning $50,000 should be able to support that same family and have an additional $50,000 remaining for savings, investments, and wealth accumulation. That's elementary addition. That's what we were all taught to believe. Except that's not remotely what transpired. What actually occurred is one of the most devastating financial switcheroos in American economic history, and almost nobody discusses it in these terms. The phenomenon has an official name. It's called the two-income trap. The term was coined by Elizabeth Warren, the current senator, back in 2003 when she was still a Harvard law professor, specializing in bankruptcy. She and her daughter Amelia Warren Tyagi conducted exhaustive research, analyzing over 2,000 families who had filed for bankruptcy. What they discovered contradicted everything conventional wisdom would predict. Having two incomes didn't make families more financially resilient. It made them dramatically more fragile. It made them more likely to file for bankruptcy, not less. Let me repeat that because it's counterintuitive enough that your brain might resist it. Families with two working parents filing bankruptcy at higher rates than families with one working parent. Two paychecks, twice the labor, twice the sacrifice, following every instruction the modern economy handed them, and they end up more likely to lose everything. This isn't a failure of individual financial discipline. This is a systemic trap, engineered over decades, and there's a very high probability you're standing in the middle of it right now without knowing it. Let me take you back to 1970 because the contrast is essential to understanding how the trap was constructed. In 1970, approximately 43% of American women participated in the workforce. The standard middle-class family structure involved one primary income earner, typically the father, and one parent managing the household, typically the mother. And here's what's been erased from our cultural memory. That single income was genuinely sufficient. Not barely sufficient, not struggling to make ends meet sufficient. Actually comfortably sufficient. The data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Census Records tells a clear story. A median single-income family in 1970 could afford a median-priced home while spending approximately 25% of their gross income on housing. They could send their children to public schools that were adequately funded, regardless of what neighborhood they lived in. They could afford basic health care, reliable transportation, groceries, and still have money remaining for savings and occasional vacations. They had what financial planners call margin. They had breathing room built into their lives, and critically, they possessed something that modern families have forfeited: a backup system. If crisis struck, if the primary earner became ill or lost their job, the stay-at-home parent could enter the workforce. That second potential income functioned as an insurance policy, an emergency reserve that could be activated when circumstances demanded it. Now examine the present. Female workforce participation has climbed to approximately 57%, and it's considerably higher among married mothers specifically. The two-income household has transformed from an exception into the default expectation. In over 60% of married couples with children, both parents work full-time. We have essentially activated the emergency backup plan as the normal operating mode. Every family is already running at maximum capacity before any crisis even occurs. Here's where the mathematics become genuinely disturbing. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median household income in 2023 was approximately $74,000. When you adjust for inflation, that's substantially higher than what the median household earned in 1970. We are collectively earning more than our parents and grandparents earned. The paychecks are bigger, but examine what happened to costs during that same period. Median home prices in 1970, when adjusted to today's dollars, were approximately $200,000. The median home price in 2023, over $400,000. Housing costs have literally doubled relative to inflation. But that's not the only category that exploded. Healthcare spending per household has increased by over 600% since 1970. Childcare, which barely registered as a significant expense in the single-income era because one parent was home, now costs the average American family over $11,000 per year per child. And that's the national average. If you live in a major metropolitan area, you're looking at $20,000 to $30,000 per child annually. Education costs for college have increased by over 1,200% since 1980. The fundamental fixed costs of being a middle-class family have exploded upward, while wages have merely crept along. And all that additional income from the second worker? Every single dollar of it got absorbed, every cent. The two-income family of 2024 doesn't have double the financial security of the single-income family from 1970. They have less, because their fixed costs expanded to consume both incomes, and they burned their backup plan just to afford baseline existence. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, this doesn't describe my situation. We're intentional with our money. We didn't allow lifestyle inflation to consume the second income. And perhaps you're the rare exception. But let me walk you through the actual mathematics of what happens to a second income in a typical dual-income household. I want you to be brutally honest with yourself, about whether this reflects your reality. Let's construct a realistic example. One partner earns $75,000, the other earns $50,000. Combined, $125,000. That feels substantial. That feels like it should buy financial security. Let's examine what actually happens to that $50,000 second income. Taxes. Because of how progressive tax brackets function, the second income gets taxed at a higher marginal rate than if it were the only income. The first $75,000 moves through the lower brackets. That additional $50,000 enters at the top of the stack. When you factor in federal income tax, state income tax, and payroll taxes, the effective rate on that second income could reach 30% to 35% or higher, depending on your state. So that $50,000 immediately becomes approximately $32,000 to $35,000 in actual take-home pay. Childcare. If you have children, they need supervision while both parents work. The average cost of daycare in America is approximately $15,000 per year per child. Have two children? That's $30,000 evaporating before either parent even leaves the house. Your $50,000 income is now worth approximately $5,000, and we're just getting started. Transportation. Two working parents means two commutes. The average American commute costs approximately $5,000 annually when you factor in fuel, vehicle maintenance, depreciation, and wear. If you're paying for parking in a downtown area, add another $2,000 to $3,000. If you require a second vehicle that you wouldn't otherwise need, add the car payment, insurance, and registration. Conservatively, the second person's commuting expenses total $8,000 annually. Your $50,000 is now negative. But we're not finished. Exhaustion expenses. Two depleted working parents means dramatically less time and energy available for cooking, cleaning, home maintenance, and all the domestic tasks that a stay-at-home parent would otherwise manage. Research consistently shows that dual-income families spend significantly more on convenient services and prepared foods. They hire house cleaners. They order delivery. They pay for lawn services. They purchase pre-made meals. They eat at restaurants more frequently because nobody possesses the energy to plan and execute a home-cooked meal after a 10-hour day, including commute. These exhaustion expenses can easily add another $5,000 to $10,000 annually compared to a household where one person has time to manage domestic labor. Let's calculate the total. That $50,000 second income minus $18,000 for taxes, minus $15,000 for childcare for one child, minus $8,000 for transportation costs, minus $7,000 for convenience and exhaustion spending. You're left with $2,000. That's not an error. The net contribution of a $50,000 second income can realistically be as low as $2,000 per year. Potentially less. Potentially negative, especially if you have multiple children or live in a high-cost metropolitan area. Someone is working full-time, missing their children's milestones, absent from family dinners, grinding through traffic for hours weekly, and the household is netting $2,000 for the entire year. That's $8 per working day. That's approximately $1 per hour of actual value delivered to the family. And here's where the psychological dimension makes everything worse, because the gross numbers appear impressive. Because you see that $125,000 combined income on your tax return, you feel like you should be prospering. You make spending decisions based on that $125,000 figure. You purchase a house based on what two incomes can qualify for. You take on car payments that two incomes can theoretically support. The mortgage lender examines your combined income and declares, "Congratulations, you qualify for a $450,000 loan." And technically, you do, as long as both incomes continue flowing indefinitely, as long as neither partner becomes ill, as long as neither gets laid off, as long as neither burns out, as long as neither needs to care for an aging parent, as long as neither has a child with special needs, as long as you successfully avoid the 1,000 unexpected circumstances that humans inevitably encounter. This is precisely where the trap snaps closed, and it's the element that Elizabeth Warren's research emphasized most strongly. The single-income family from 1970 possessed something the dual-income family of today has forfeited: financial flexibility. If the breadwinner lost their job, the stay-at-home parent could seek employment. It wasn't ideal, it would require adjustment. But it was a backup plan. It was margin. It was resilience. The dual income family has already played that card. Both incomes are already fully committed to the monthly overhead. There's no backup plan remaining. There's no reserve income to activate in an emergency. If either partner loses their job, becomes ill, or cannot work for any reason, the family doesn't merely lose that income. They often cannot maintain their fixed costs even temporarily because those costs were sized, assuming two incomes would flow forever. This explains Warren's research finding that two-income families file bankruptcy at higher rates. It's not because they're irresponsible, it's not because they're frivolous, it's because they have zero margin for error. They're operating at 100% capacity with no reserves, like an engine running at maximum RPM with no oil. Everything functions perfectly until the moment it doesn't, and then everything shatters simultaneously. A 2019 Federal Reserve study found that nearly 40% of American adults couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing money or selling possessions. 40%. And many of those individuals are in dual-income households, earning solid incomes on paper. They're not struggling because they don't earn enough. They're struggling because their expenses expanded to consume every dollar of their combined earnings. They're one unexpected car repair away from financial crisis. And if what I'm describing is hitting close to home, if you're starting to recognize your own situation in these numbers, I need you to understand something. You're not alone. Millions of households are caught in this exact trap without having the language to describe it. Capital Sense exists specifically to expose these hidden mechanics that keep people running in place. So, if this is resonating, if pieces are clicking into place that never made sense before, take 3 seconds and subscribe to this channel, because most people will never find content like this. The algorithm buries financial education in favor of entertainment. And by subscribing, you're not just helping yourself. You're helping the algorithm show this to more families who are stuck in the same cycle and don't even know it yet. Here's what really gets me. The expenses that consume the second income weren't luxury expenditures. They weren't yachts and Rolex watches and frivolous consumption. They were housing, childcare, healthcare, education. They were the fixed costs of participating in the middle class. Examine housing specifically because this is where the bidding war effect becomes impossible to ignore. In the single-income era, families competed for housing based on one income. There was a natural ceiling on what homes could cost because buyers only had one paycheck to offer. When dual-income families became the norm, families suddenly possessed twice the purchasing power competing for the same limited supply of houses. What do you think happened to prices? They got bid up, dramatically up. If every family has two incomes, then two incomes become the baseline requirement just to compete. Suddenly you need two incomes just to afford what one income purchased previously. It's an arms race where everyone escalated and nobody won except the people selling the houses. The identical dynamic occurred with education. Public school districts are primarily funded by property taxes. Good schools exist in expensive neighborhoods because expensive neighborhoods generate more property tax revenue. Parents naturally want their children in quality schools, so families began bidding up property prices in desirable school districts, deploying their two incomes to outcompete other families. Warren calls this the bidding war for educational opportunity. The admission price to quality public schools became a $450,000 mortgage instead of a $220,000 mortgage. You're not technically paying tuition, but you're paying the tuition equivalent embedded in your housing costs. And once you're committed to that mortgage, you're committed to needing both incomes indefinitely. You cannot reduce. You cannot return to one income. You cannot create margin. The trap has closed completely. Now I can hear the objection forming in your mind. This is interesting history and analysis, but what am I supposed to do with this information? I can't just have my partner quit their job. We need both incomes to survive. And I understand that response. That's precisely the trap talking. You need both incomes to survive the lifestyle you've constructed around both incomes. The expenses were sized for two paychecks. The commitments were made assuming two paychecks. Of course, you can't suddenly drop to one. But here's the mindset shift that changes the entire equation moving forward. You need to start treating the second income as if it's temporary, even if it isn't. Here's what I mean. Most families do the exact opposite. They treat both incomes as permanent, guaranteed, and eternal. They construct their fixed costs accordingly. They purchase the house that two incomes can qualify for. They lease the vehicles that two incomes can support. They enroll the kids in activities and schools that two incomes can fund, and then they're trapped. They've constructed an existence that requires two incomes to function, which means neither partner can ever stop working. Not even if they want to. Not even if circumstances make it necessary. Not even if continuing becomes genuinely harmful to their health or family. The alternative approach is what I call the one-income foundation. You structure your fixed costs, your non-negotiable monthly expenses, so they can be covered by one income alone. The second income then becomes entirely discretionary. Savings, investments, debt elimination, or yes, some lifestyle enhancement if you choose. But the crucial distinction is that you could survive without it. You'd need to make cuts. Life wouldn't be as comfortable. But you wouldn't lose the house. You wouldn't face bankruptcy. You wouldn't be one job loss away from catastrophe. You'd possess the margin that modern dual-income families have surrendered. Let me make this tangible. Say your household earns $135,000 combined, $80,000 and $55,000. Instead of assuming a mortgage that requires $100,000 or more in annual income to service comfortably, you assume a mortgage that can be managed on $65,000. Instead of two car payments, you have one. Or zero. You reside in a neighborhood that's perhaps slightly less prestigious, with schools that are good but not elite tier. You purchase the house that one income can afford, and you systematically bank the difference. That second income, or at least the substantial majority of it, goes directly into building wealth. Emergency fund first, then retirement accounts, then taxable brokerage investments. Every dollar you invest is purchasing optionality. It's purchasing the flexibility to have one partner step back if needed, to take a calculated career risk, to handle a health crisis without financial devastation, to be present for aging parents, to homeschool if that's what your family needs, to actually possess genuine choice in how you live your life. This requires sacrifice in the short term. It means driving past the beautiful houses you could technically qualify for. It means explaining to friends and family why you're not upgrading your lifestyle even though you both got raises. It means resisting the social pressure to spend like a dual-income family because you're strategically building like a single-income family. But here's the payoff, and it's substantial. Within 5 to 10 years of executing this approach, something transformative occurs. The investments you made with that second income begin generating their own income. Compounding takes over. The snowball starts rolling, and suddenly you actually possess what you thought dual incomes would provide in the first place. Genuine, unshakable financial security. You're no longer two job losses away from crisis. You're building wealth instead of frantically treading water. You can make decisions based on what's genuinely best for your family rather than what's necessary to service the mortgage payment. You have the backup plan that your grandparents had. You've rebuilt the margin that the modern economy stole from you. And look, I want to be direct with you for a moment. I make these videos because I genuinely believe this information should be accessible to everyone, not just people who can afford financial advisors or happen to stumble on the right books. Most personal finance content tells you to budget harder, or cut lattes, or grind more. Almost nobody explains the structural traps that make all that grinding feel pointless. If this video is giving you a new framework for understanding your financial life, I'm asking you to do one thing. Subscribe to Capital Sense. Not because I need the numbers, but because every subscription tells the algorithm that this content matters. And the more the algorithm promotes this, the more families escape this trap before they're already too deep in it. You might not need this reminder yourself, but someone in your life probably does. Subscribe so you don't forget about us when that person needs help. I want to leave you with one final thought because I believe it reframes this entire conversation. The two-income trap isn't fundamentally about income. It's about flexibility. It's about margin. It's about possessing options when life throws the unexpected at you. Our grandparents, with their single incomes, had something precious that we've traded away. They had the ability to absorb a shock, to change direction, to have one partner focus entirely on raising children or caring for elderly family members without the entire financial structure collapsing. We traded that flexibility for larger houses, for newer cars, for the appearance of prosperity, for keeping pace with the neighbors. But appearances aren't wealth. Cash flow isn't security. And two incomes aren't superior to one if both of them are already spent before they even arrive in your bank account. The families who actually build wealth in the modern economy aren't necessarily the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who've preserved their flexibility. They're the ones who refuse to let their expenses expand to consume every dollar of income. They're the ones who kept their backup plan in reserve instead of deploying it just to maintain lifestyle appearances. You can earn your way out of many problems, but you cannot earn your way out of a trap you don't even recognize you're standing in. Now you recognize it. You see the trap. You understand its mechanics. You know how it was constructed. The question is what you're going to do with that knowledge. You can continue on the same trajectory, hoping that nothing goes wrong, hoping that both incomes keep flowing forever. Or you can start building differently. One income foundation, margin, flexibility, options. The choice is yours, but at least now you're making it with open eyes instead of stumbling forward blindly. If this video changed how you see your household finances, share it with another dual income couple who needs to hear it. We don't discuss these structural traps nearly enough. We celebrate the hustle culture while ignoring the systemic forces that make hustling feel endless. The more people who understand this, the less power these systems have over all of us. Thanks for watching Capital Sense. I'll see you in the next one.